The air in my basement was thick and musty. It always smelled like damp clothes and old comic books. But tonight, it smelled like something else. Fear. My friends and I were huddled together on the worn-out couch, our faces lit by the glow of the giant TV screen. Finals were over. Summer had officially begun. We were supposed to be celebrating. But instead, we were about to do something stupid. Something really, really stupid. My older cousins, Leo and Mark, had brought over a new video game. They said it was the scariest thing ever made. I should have told them to take it back. I really should have. My best friend Sarah nervously chewed on her fingernails. Across from her, Sam kept adjusting his glasses, his eyes wide and unblinking. We were all a little on edge. Leo, who was 2 years older than us and thought he knew everything, just grinned. He held up a plain black game case. There was no art on it, just 2 words scratched in silvery letters. He said he got it from some weird website online, a site that disappeared right after he bought it. That should have been our first warning sign, but we were teenagers. We didn't listen to warning signs. We thought we were invincible. Mark, Leo's brother, plugged the console into the TV. He was quieter than Leo, but he had a mischievous glint in his eye that always made me nervous. He said the game was supposed to be haunted, that players had reported strange things happening in their homes after playing it. Shadows moving on their own, doors slamming shut. I laughed it off, trying to act brave. "It's just a game," I said, my voice sounding a lot shakier than I wanted. Sarah squeezed a couch cushion tightly, her knuckles turning white. She didn't look convinced. None of us did, really. The basement felt colder than usual. I could feel goosebumps prickling my arms, and it wasn't from the air conditioning. It was a deep, chilling cold that seemed to come from nowhere. The kind of cold that makes you feel like someone is watching you, someone you can't see. Leo finally slotted the game disc into the console. The screen flickered to life and a low humming sound filled the room. The title screen appeared. The letters seemed to drip down the screen like blood. We were all silent now. The fun, celebratory mood had vanished completely. We were about to step into the basement of doom, and we didn't even know it. The game started normally enough. We had to create our own characters. I made mine a brave knight with shining armor. Sarah chose a nimble rogue who could hide in the shadows. Sam picked a wise wizard with a long, flowing beard. Leo and Mark, of course, made their characters look like hulking barbarians with giant axes. We laughed as we customized our digital avatars, and for a moment, the fear melted away. The game world was a spooky, fog-covered forest. The graphics were amazing. Every tree looked twisted and gnarled like an old man's hand reaching out to grab us. The sound of crickets chirped through the speakers, mixed with the distant howl of a wolf. Our mission was simple. We had to explore a haunted mansion at the edge of the forest and uncover its dark secret. Classic horror stuff. For the first hour, it was actually fun. We worked together, solving puzzles and fighting off packs of snarling goblin creatures. Leo, with his barbarian character, would charge in headfirst, swinging his axe wildly. Sam would cast spells from a distance, and Sarah would sneak around to find hidden treasures. My knight character stood at the front, blocking attacks with my shield. We were a good team. We felt powerful. The game was challenging, but it felt fair. It felt like any other game we had played before. But as we got closer to the mansion, things started to change. The atmosphere grew heavier. The fog in the game became so thick we could barely see a few feet in front of our characters. The cheerful chirping of crickets was replaced by a low, unsettling drone. It sounded like a swarm of angry bees, but deeper, more menacing. The enemies changed too. We were no longer fighting goblins. Now we faced shadowy figures with glowing red eyes. They didn't make any sound when they attacked. They just glided out of the fog, silent and terrifying. They were much harder to defeat. We finally reached the tall iron gates of the mansion. It loomed over us, a massive silhouette against the pale moonlight. The windows were dark, like empty eye sockets. A sense of dread washed over me, so strong it felt real. This wasn't just a game anymore, it felt different. I glanced over at my friends. Their faces were pale, their eyes glued to the screen. No one was laughing now. The fun was over. We had followed the path. We had walked right into the trap. We were standing at the entrance to the haunted mansion, but it felt like we were standing at the gates of hell itself, and we were about to open them. We pushed open the virtual gates, and our characters stepped inside the mansion's courtyard. The drone sound grew louder. That's when the first weird thing happened. In the corner of the screen, just behind a crumbling statue, I saw a shadow move. It wasn't one of the enemy creatures. It was tall and thin, shaped like a person, but it darted away before I could get a good look. "Did you guys see that?" I asked, my heart starting to pound in my chest. Sam nodded slowly. "I saw it," he whispered. "It looked different." Leo just grunted. "Probably just a glitch," he said, trying to sound confident. "This game is probably full of them." But it didn't feel like a glitch. Glitches were random. This felt intentional. As our characters walked through the mansion's grand foyer, dust motes dancing in the beams of our virtual flashlights, we saw more of them. Quick, dark shapes flitting at the edges of our vision. They were always just out of sight. Whenever we turned our characters to look, they were gone. It was like the game was teasing us, toying with us, making us question what we were seeing. The house itself seemed to be alive. Doors would creak open on their own. Paintings on the wall would change, their smiling subjects turning into screaming ghouls when we weren't looking. Then, the game started to fight back in a new way. My controller suddenly vibrated violently in my hands, so hard I almost dropped it. On screen, my knight character stopped moving. I tried to make him walk, but he was frozen in place. Then, his head slowly turned all by itself to look at a dark, empty hallway. It was like he was being controlled by someone else. "I can't move!" I yelled. Sarah gasped. "Me neither! My character is stuck!" One by one, we all realized we had lost control. Our characters stood frozen in the foyer, all of them forced to stare down that same dark hallway. "It's just a bug," Mark said, but his voice was tight with fear. "A really, really bad bug." He tried to press the pause button on his controller. Nothing happened. He tried to turn off the console. It wouldn't respond. We were locked in. The game was playing itself now, and we were just passengers. The low, droning sound from the speakers intensified, and a cold draft swept through the real basement, making the hairs on my neck stand up. This was no glitch. This was something else, something sinister. The game had a mind of its own, and it wasn't going to let us go. The humming from the TV speakers started to change. It twisted and warped, and slowly words began to form within the noise. At first, they were just whispers, faint and hard to understand. They sounded like they were coming from very far away, one seemed to say. But then other voices joined in. They were not helpful. They were cruel. They whispered our names, a raspy voice hissed. Sarah jumped, dropping her controller on the floor with a clatter. "How does it know my name?" she cried, her face a mask of terror. "The game shouldn't know our names. We hadn't entered them anywhere." The voices grew louder, clearer. They weren't coming from the game's characters. They were coming from the game itself. They swirled around us, seeming to echo in the real basement. A child's laughter, high-pitched and eerie, echoed from the left speaker. A man's angry shouting erupted from the right. They started saying things about us, things they shouldn't know. The whispers mentioned the C+ I got on my history final. They taunted Sam about being afraid of the dark. They mocked Leo for trying to act so brave when he was really just as scared as the rest of us. It was impossible. It was absolutely impossible. We were all panicking now. Sam was covering his ears, trying to block out the horrible sounds. "Make it stop," he pleaded, his body trembling. "Just turn it off." Mark scrambled behind the TV stand, yanking at the power cord. He pulled and pulled, his face red with effort. Finally, with a loud pop, the plug came free from the wall socket. The TV screen should have gone black. The console should have shut down. But it didn't. The screen stayed on, glowing with that same sickly light. The whispers didn't stop. In fact, they got louder. They were laughing at us, laughing at our pathetic attempts to escape. The cold in the room was unbearable now. I could see my own breath fogging in front of my face. It felt like we were in a freezer. The whispers continued to torment us, calling our names, dredging up our deepest fears and insecurities. It felt like the game was reaching out of the screen, into our minds, and pulling out the things that scared us the most. We were trapped in my basement, listening to a haunted game mock us, with no way to shut it off. The line between the game and our world was blurring, and we were standing right on the edge. Leo had seen enough. "That's it!" he shouted, his voice cracking. "I'm smashing it!" He grabbed the heavy metal base of a floor lamp and stalked toward the television. He was going to break the screen. He was going to end this nightmare once and for all. He raised the lamp high above his head, his face a grim mask of determination. We all held our breath, watching. This had to work. It just had to. He swung the lamp down with all his might, aiming for the center of the screen. But just before it made contact, the screen flashed with a blinding white light. The light was so bright it was like a lightning strike inside the basement. We all shielded our eyes, crying out in pain and surprise. A powerful force, like a physical wave, exploded from the television. It knocked Leo backward, sending him tumbling over the coffee table. The lamp flew from his hands and clattered to the floor. The force hit all of us, pushing us back into the couch cushions. It felt like being punched in the chest. The air was sucked out of my lungs. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see. All I could hear was a deafening, high-pitched ringing in my ears. When the light finally faded and my vision returned, I saw that something was terribly wrong. The basement was gone. The worn-out couch, the comic book posters on the wall, the concrete floor, it had all vanished. We were no longer in my house. We were standing on cracked stone tiles. The air was thick with fog and smelled of dust and decay. I looked up and saw a high, vaulted ceiling covered in cobwebs. We were in the mansion. We were inside the game. My real hands, not my characters, were trembling. I was still wearing my jeans and hoodie. This was not a dream. Panic set in. Pure, undiluted panic. I started to scream, a long, piercing shriek that echoed through the vast, empty hall. Sam was hyperventilating, his back pressed against a cold stone wall. Leo and Mark just stared, their faces drained of all color, their mouths hanging open in disbelief. We had tried to stop the game. We had tried to fight back, but the game was stronger. It hadn't just resisted us, it had retaliated. It had pulled us in. We weren't playing Twisted Fate anymore. We were living it. And the nightmare had only just begun. We were standing in the grand foyer of the haunted mansion. It was exactly like it was in the game, but honestly 1,000 times more terrifying. The details were all there, but now they were real. I could feel the chill of the stone floor through the soles of my shoes. I could actually smell the rot and dampness in the air. The faint light filtering through the grimy, arched windows cast these long, dancing shadows that looked just like grasping claws. The whispers were all around us now, no longer coming from speakers, but from the very walls of the mansion itself. They were louder, more menacing, swirling around our heads like a ghostly storm. We tried the front doors. They were massive, made of solid oak and bound with iron straps. Leo and Mark threw their shoulders against them, grunting and shoving with all their strength. The doors didn't budge, not even a millimeter. It was like trying to push over a mountain. We were sealed inside. I ran to one of the tall windows and peered out. I didn't see my backyard. I saw the game world. The gnarled, foggy forest stretched out as far as the eye could see under a sickly, perpetually moonlit sky. There was no escape. There was no way home. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoed from the floors above us. It wasn't one of us. It was a sound of pure agony, and it was followed by the monstrous roar of something inhuman. We all froze, our eyes darting up toward the grand staircase that led into darkness. The monsters were real too, the silent, shadowy figures with glowing red eyes. The other things we had only heard about in the game's lore. They were here, in the house with us. We were no longer brave adventurers with swords and spells. We were just 5 scared kids, trapped and defenseless. The realization crashed down on us with the weight of a tombstone. This wasn't a level to be beaten. This wasn't a puzzle to be solved. This was our new reality, a living nightmare designed by a malevolent intelligence that wanted to see us suffer. The whispers grew more intense, laughing at our despair. "You can't win," they hissed. "You belong to the game now." We huddled together in the center of the foyer, a tiny island of warmth in an ocean of cold, dark fear. We were the game's new secret, the new souls trapped within its cursed walls. As we stood trembling in the foyer, a new figure appeared at the top of the grand staircase. It hadn't been there a second ago. It just was. It was a tall, slender man dressed in a pristine, old-fashioned black suit. But something was horribly wrong with him. Where his face should have been, there was nothing. Just a smooth, blank canvas of skin. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. It was the most horrifying thing I had ever seen. He didn't need eyes to see us. We could feel his gaze on us, a heavy, suffocating pressure that made it hard to breathe. The whispers in the mansion fell silent. All we could hear was the frantic pounding of our own hearts. This was the source of the evil, the master of the game. The faceless man tilted his head, a gesture that was somehow curious and mocking at the same time. He didn't walk down the stairs, he glided. His feet didn't seem to touch the steps as he descended toward us, silent and graceful. With every step he took, the temperature in the room dropped even further. Frost began to creep across the stone floor, spreading out from where he moved. He was the embodiment of the game's cold, cruel heart. He was the reason we were trapped here. He was the curse. We were paralyzed with fear. My legs felt like they were made of lead. I wanted to run, to scream, to do anything, but my body wouldn't obey. The faceless man stopped at the bottom of the stairs, only a few yards away from our terrified huddle. He raised a long, pale hand and pointed a finger at Sam. Sam let out a small, choked whimper. The faceless man didn't speak, but a voice echoed in all of our minds, a voice that was cold and ancient and full of dark amusement. "You wanted to play a game," it said. "Now let's play." Suddenly, the walls of the foyer began to shift and change. The grand staircase twisted into a grotesque, spiraling slide. The doors morphed into solid stone walls. The entire mansion was rearranging itself around us, like a toy in the hands of a cruel child. The faceless man was the game master, and he was changing the rules. He was designing a new level just for us, a level with no exit, a level where the goal wasn't to win, but simply to survive for as long as he found it entertaining. He was the final boss, and we had no way to fight him. The chase began. The faceless man didn't run after us. He didn't have to. The mansion itself did his bidding. Hallways stretched into impossible lengths, or twisted into confusing mazes. Doors would slam shut in our faces, separating us, while others would swing open to reveal rooms filled with unspeakable horrors. Shadow creatures with glowing red eyes lunged at us from the darkness. Ghostly apparitions floated through walls, their silent screams chilling us to the bone. We ran. We ran until our lungs burned and our legs ached, but there was nowhere to go. Every corner we turned, every door we opened, only led us deeper into the nightmare. We got separated. I was running down a long corridor with Sarah when a wall of solid rock slammed down between us. I heard her scream my name from the other side, her voice filled with terror. I pounded my fists against the cold stone, but it was useless. The mansion had split us up, making us easier targets. I was alone. The whispers started again, but now they were directed just at me. "You can't save her," they taunted. "You can't even save yourself." I could hear the distant screams of my friends echoing through the labyrinthine halls, each one a fresh wave of horror. I stumbled into a vast library. Bookshelves stretched up into the darkness, higher than any real building could be. The faceless man was there, standing at the far end of the room, waiting for me. He just stood there, his blank face a perfect void. I turned to run, but the doorway I had come through was gone, replaced by another bookshelf. I was trapped. He began to glide toward me, slowly, deliberately. He wanted me to feel the fear, to savor my despair. I was a mouse in his maze, and he was tired of the game. I backed away, tripping over scattered books, my mind racing. There had to be a way out, an exit, a cheat code, a glitch, something. But as the faceless man drew closer, a terrible understanding dawned on me. This wasn't a world with rules that could be broken. The only rule was his will. There was no escape hatch. There was no secret exit. The game wasn't designed to be won. It was designed to be a prison, a place where souls were collected, trapped forever to feed its endless, empty hunger. My hope died, replaced by a cold, heavy certainty. This was the end. My final moments were a blur of terror. The faceless man reached me. He didn't touch me, but I felt a coldness worse than any ice seep into my very soul. My vision blurred, and the world of the mansion dissolved into a swirling vortex of static and code. I wasn't just in the game anymore, I was becoming part of it. My consciousness was being unraveled, woven into the fabric of the haunted program. The last thing I heard was the cold, emotionless voice in my head. Game over. And then, there was only darkness. A digital prison from which I would never wake up. We are all still here. Sarah, Sam, Leo, Mark, and me. We are the new ghosts in the machine. Sometimes we can almost see each other, like faint images on a corrupted file, drifting through the endless, shifting halls of the mansion. We are the new whispers that taunt the next players. We are the fleeting shadows in the corner of the screen. We are the warnings that no one will ever heed. We have become part of the curse, forced to play our part in luring the next victims into the trap. Our fear and our despair are what give the faceless man his power. The game, Twisted Fate, is still out there. It can't be destroyed. Smashing the disk does nothing. Deleting the file is impossible. It always finds a way. It appears on a forgotten corner of the internet, on a dusty shelf in a secondhand store, or in the hands of a curious teenager looking for a new thrill. It calls to them, promising them the ultimate horror experience. A game so realistic, it feels like you're really there. And the promise is true. It's more real than they can possibly imagine. But it's a one-way trip, so be warned. If you ever see a plain black game case with the words Twisted Fate scratched on the cover, run. Throw it away. Burn it. Do whatever you have to do, but do not play it. Don't let your curiosity get the better of you, because the game is always waiting. It's always hungry. It's looking for new players. It's looking for new souls to trap in its digital hell. The faceless man is waiting for you. And if you press start, there is no escape. It will be game over. Forever.